I'm here with my good friend Cody Lopez, the director of RevOps from Secured Tech Solutions. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me this morning, man.
Oh, it's my pleasure. We get to talk about probably my favorite topic right now, which is probably weird for most people. Like, why are we talking about order management in HubSpot?
I mean,
Uh,
whether or not it should be, it's probably my favorite topic right now as well. So,
well, I mean, when you get thrust into your role, everybody starts approaching this from, sales and marketing usually, or maybe customer service. But then you realize that this piece in the middle uh, is in rough shape.
mhm.
And, let's start there. Like, what describe the shape that it was in? Like, why were you even looking for things to help?
I mean, I think we're a startup. The company started in 2018, and so I feel like a lot of companies do. We're just trying to find the best in class solution for everything that we had going on. And as we started to offer more services and products, we needed more best in class solutions, and that created kind of a web of disparate systems. The one thing that felt really unifying that we started using right around the same time that I started with the company was HubSpot. And at the time, I think we started with Sales Hub Starter, and that was the only thing that we had. And obviously that's grown pretty significantly since then. But so as we worked our way through, and kind of how I got to this point was, all of every aspect of providing the services or products for our customers was built out within the infrastructure that we had in HubSpot, or had access to and had knowledge of. And that was almost exclusively deal pipelines. Or I guess I would say at the beginning it was exclusively deal pipelines. And so we were attempting to manage the sales process. And I even before that, I mean, we were attempting to manage like lead qualification, and then beginning an actual opportunity with the entirety of the sales process. Then trying to manage post-sale fulfillment. And I think for a while it worked relatively well. But as we continued to offer more solutions, and all of our solutions gained more synergy, that was the biggest thing, as we started seeing customers who wanted to not just buy this one thing from us, but wanted to work with us on multiple fronts. Having deals jumping between this deal pipeline to this new deal pipeline for fulfillment became problematic pretty quickly, because when you've got three business lines, three revenue streams in a single deal that have to go through different processes to be fulfilled correctly, that doesn't work very well. And so
Right.
that's how we got here. Is I was kind of charged with, how do we make this better and clearer and stop people from having to duplicate deals? Like, we had whole positions that almost exclusively spent their time clicking into a deal once it hit a certain pipeline and parsing out like line items and notes, and just having to create another deal in another pipeline. And then at the time, you couldn't even associate deals with deals. Like, you couldn't associate like objects in HubSpot. And so we had like a rich text field where we were putting the hyperlink for the other deal in, like, to keep them together. It was nuts. And then you had to move them, in conjunction with one another to an extent. And it was just a huge time suck. And so
Right.
that's
And
where we were
And
at the
so
time.
before we dig into more details, just for context, what are the different ways that, customers can work with you guys?
Yeah, so we're a K-12 ed tech solutions provider. So for us, our goal is really to be a one-stop shop for any one-to-one device program that K-12 school districts might have. And so all students in districts nowadays have Chromebooks, iPads, MacBooks, whatever it might be. And so for us, we're offering devices and device accessories or other peripherals. So that's chargers, headphones, charging carts, and then actual new devices. So we can sell healthy level of Chromebooks. We actually started as a repair company for iPads, and our repair business has expanded pretty significantly. So we offer in-house repairs for iPads, Chromebooks, MacBook, really any, again, one-to-one device. We sell parts to school districts who want to self-maintain. We offer underwritten accidental damage protection plans for school districts. And so if they want to enter into an agreement similar to AppleCare, but with a third-party provider, we are that third-party provider, and it's underwritten so that their investment is safe. And we have a multitude of different ways that looks, and schools can set that up with us. And then we also offer software. We resell software that schools use. And then we have a buyback program, which is pretty robust. So when school districts are looking to offload their used tech for a refresh, we can either purchase that from them and just give them value on the spot for that in our kind of typical buyback program. But then we also offer a community buyback program, which was really born out of, I think, everything during COVID. We had this idea that a lot of school districts are spending, school districts are buying things with taxpayer dollars. And then when they get rid of that equipment, the value, if they're selling it off to another, to a third party, the value is leaving the community. Yes, we're paying for those devices and it's going back into the school district's budget. But what if we had a way to close the technology gap in those communities? And so we started the community buyback program, and it looks similar in that we are buying back devices, but then we're facilitating a community sale for the school district. So not only are they reclaiming the value of some of those devices once they're ready to let them go, but then those devices are going into the hands of their students, their faculty, other people in the area. And so you can kind of see with all those different ways of doing business with us, a lot of them follow different processes
Right.
to be fulfilled. And so that's where, as we started doing more and more, it became a little bit challenging to, how do we offer an ADP plan at the same time as selling them cases, at the same time as selling them chargers, when chargers are coming from our internal stock, cases are coming from a third-party vendor, and ADP is a service that we're offering, as opposed to a product that we're shipping out. So again, got really messy really fast once we started seeing some more synergy there.
Right. Well, I think it's a good time to share your screen.
Yeah.
And probably I think the buyback program itself represents a good example. But to give we find so many users in this situation just because in most cases, some documented process is better than no documented process. And when you see a tool like Deals and you see pipelines and you see a stage and gate setup that can serve how we move through things, it's very easy to get comfortable in that space. And so, we need somebody to do this. I'm just going to add this stage, add these properties. Oh, now we need somebody else. We need to be able to sign it at this point. Let's add a stage there. But as you kind of walk through what happens with this process, speak to some of the challenges that your team, was experiencing.
Yeah. Well, so, and I highlighted some, and again, just talking about the buyback process. If we scroll way out, these are all the deal pipelines for different business lines that we were using. But this giant chunk at the top here with all these comments and thoughts, this is all just for the buyback process. And every single one of these is a deal pipeline. And this is not the current state anymore, thankfully. We still have a ways to go on buybacks. But what was happening was the sales process was managed in this initial pipeline. And then from there, it would leave this pipeline. And so all the funnel data and other information would go with it. The deal would jump down into a logistics pipeline. And so this was focusing on, okay, we're buying these devices from the district. How do we get them to our facility so that we can either process, clean, and grade them in-house or send them to a third party who was managing some of that load for us at the time. And so they went through their own logistics pipeline. And then from there, once we got all the devices, then this is where that position who was responsible for like splitting deals really kicked in. And so, at the time that this was the setup, we were processing mostly iPads in-house. And then if we had Chromebooks that were part of a buyback, we had to outsource that because we just didn't have the infrastructure to process, grade, and go through those. So we had a person who would look at this deal and then pick out every individual device. And when I say it wasn't, we probably could have been even more organized about it then, but it wasn't as simple as, oh, there's 5 line items, 3 of them are iPads, 2 of them are Chromebooks. Let's just take the line items off of this deal and put them on this new deal. It was notes had joint information. It was open text, like multi-line text properties had information. And so it was a person who would literally sit here and they would pick the pipeline, they would move it to either processing in-house or processing outsourced, and then they would weed through that deal and split it and then drop the other one in the other pipeline. And if we had a weird scenario where maybe our load needed to be lightened a little bit and we could take most of the iPads, but we were going to outsource some of the iPads, then you get into even more complexity because the typical, iPads stay here, Chromebooks go there, got even more convoluted. And so then we were looking at, split deals, which is the terminology that we use pretty regularly. We were looking at split deals with 50 iPads here, 50 iPads there, when in totality it was just 100 for the same district. And so they would go through whatever their respective processes were. And then at the end of it all, once they were processed, if it was a community buyback, that program I was just explaining, it would drop into a unique pipeline to finalize the community buyback pieces, having, hosting the sale for the district, getting everything shipped out. And then again, once the community buyback was over, it would then jump into this reporting pipeline. If it wasn't a community buyback, it would just go straight to this reporting pipeline. And this is where that person who was splitting the deals would then come back and basically unify them again, like merge them together, so that we could generate a holistic report to send to the school district on here's everything that you sent in, how it graded, what we can offer, so on and so forth. And so you can imagine, that was quite the process to run through every single time we were doing a buyback with a school district.
Right. And it's really like, I applaud you guys for even getting this far because the process exists whether you're doing it in HubSpot or not.
Yes.
And if you don't have a system like this, it's spreadsheets, it's emails, it's docs, it's this, local file system that we're asking people to manage and maintain. And instead of creating new deals, they're creating new docs and nobody can see it. So even just getting it into the system in an organized way, is often where you have to start. Right.
Well, don't let me fool you. There were plenty of spreadsheets.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, we were just like, how in the world does anybody keep up with all of this if we don't have something kind of marking it? And one thing that I noticed we did a lot too, which I think is worth mentioning because we've been able to get so much better about this over time, especially with the introduction of some of the post-sale management stuff, is somebody said this, and I don't think this reflects our collective opinion, but we essentially had to like idiot proof our pipelines. And what I mean by that is every single step in the process that anybody took. And it was as simple as like, hey, I'm ready for a quote, because the person who moved it here wasn't the same person creating the quote. So they would say, hey, I'm ready for a quote. And then they would get a ping and the person would input all the information. And then they would say, hey, the information is here and the quote can now be created. And then that person would get a ping again. And then they would move it here and say, hey, the quote is ready for you, salesperson. Now you can send it off to the customer. So again, we were just bouncing through every single tiny iteration. And the responsibility for it was changing hands 12 times within a single pipeline. It was nuts. And so
Well,
when
that's why
the
you need
crack,
all the steps, right?
yeah,
Like, because that's the only way people can come in and know what's going on. If you're asking multiple stakeholders to come in and own a piece of the deal process, because we're combining the buying process, the sales process, procurement and purchasing processes,
mm-hmm,
uh, you know, post sale delivery and fulfillment processes. There's money coming in and possibly out. With the buyback, there's rev share involved, right? So
mm-hmm,
the only way to even get close to managing all that is to create, you know, this kind of, I'm going to call it complexity because it's a complex process to be
yep,
managed. But obviously, when we have to do it all in deals, it creates a lot of lack of clarity, in regards to sales management overall and just, who's doing what, where, when on the deal
mm-hmm,
record becomes very confusing. Um, so when you, so early this year, uh, you had reached out on this Brocketeer community looking for help with this.
mm-hmm.
And when we first chatted, it, you didn't just start looking for help that day, right? You had been
Yeah,
trying to find ways to solve for this. And what were you finding?
yeah. I mean, I feel like for a couple months, it was mostly tickets, like using the ticketing system in HubSpot, um, which especially at that time felt like such a foreign idea because tickets in my mind were what I think a lot of people think tickets are, which is like service help desk type stuff. But that was the solution that everybody had, was use deal stages to generate tickets to follow whatever process you need. And instantly that seemed like the best route, but again, it didn't solve the problem of, well, every line item that goes through a different fulfillment process still would need its own ticket. It would need its own pipeline. It would need, to follow its own whatever. And so that didn't really solve the problem for me. It did keep us out of jumping and losing funnel data and sales velocity data. And, it was going to provide, this was a time when I first started looking at, maybe first was being charged with like, let's get some measurements and some analytics going here. And so it solved for some of it, but not all of it. And I don't know, I was kind of baffled that there wasn't a clear answer to this. And so that's why, I ended up posting probably an overwhelmingly long message in the Sprocketeer Slack. And
Uh, you provided context, which
yeah,
was important. But that context, like the ecosystem that we're living in, drove you, to that context. Because I think the reason that you only saw ticketing information is one, if you don't have an enterprise level portal, you don't have access to custom objects.
mm-hmm,
Tickets is the only way out. And there's you can do a lot of what we're talking about, with tickets, because just the separation of deals and, you know, project management is
mm-hmm,
huge, right? So even that separation is helpful. But then knowing that tickets is built to be a help desk, triage type object, just like deals is meant to be for sales management, ultimately it doesn't, jive with the order management stuff.
yeah,
So, I mean, and the second point is like custom objects have only been around, since 2020. There's not a lot of knowledge about how to use them successfully. If anything, you find advice that says don't use them if
mm,
you don't have to. Um, so, and when you reached out, so naturally that's what you've been finding. And I hit on this point because this is our challenge in the ecosystem right now, going from point solution to customer platform. So then Cody comes looking for help with a help desk, best practices or ticketing setup. And my initial response was like, nope, I'm not a help desk guy. I haven't really done that before, so I didn't respond. And then Cameron, the community manager, tagged me in, and I gave my 2 cents on it. But earlier that day, we had happened to be talking about the very solution to this problem, because we've been seeing it in a lot of places, right? Including the businesses that I used to work for. It's this post-sales process that just, it's overwhelming for teams. They have never had, really the right tools to tie a customer experience focus. Because that's I think a good thing to highlight. Your team is so customer experience focused. That's why you want to do all these things for these customers. That's why you want to help the community, and while also helping the school, that you bought from at the same time. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so it creates a lot of chaos internally because we're just doing whatever it takes. And, oftentimes that chaos leads to an overcorrection, of process and implementing stuff like, ERPs or inventory systems first,
Mm-hmm.
right? You guys already had HubSpot in place, so that's where it got started. But this is exactly why, we were talking about this. And when you found this on your own,
Yeah.
searching for post sales, I think.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
what was it about it that, clicked for you?
Uh, I mean, again, the keyword for post sales order management, like that, I was like, this is the only thing I've seen that even is using these words in order, the way that I'm meaning them. But I think it was just I didn't have a great grasp of what custom objects could be used for. I think we'd already invested in enterprise at this point, Sales Hub Enterprise, but I didn't. As a person who's not a developer, that's one of those things where I thought, oh, this is probably really intensive in a way that I just can't do on my own. Um, but when I watched it, I think the idea that what I communicated earlier, which was tickets were the best solution that was proposed, but it just didn't feel right. It didn't seem like it was really going to solve most of the problems that I was trying to solve. And it was going to take hours, like of investment and planning and prep to like put it together for what would have felt like a half-baked product at the end of it, because that's not what they're made for. And so watching this and seeing you guys explain basically, hey, well, if you have the capacity for custom objects, you can build exactly what you're looking for in deliverables and customer orders. And I don't know, it just felt like an instant, okay, obviously this is exactly what I'm looking for. How do we do this? And
Right.
why is this not something that more people are discussing?
Good questions, man. That's why we're here right now. It's still a big challenge, for people. But, a conversation I had this morning, like, it's much, much easier than people think. Uh, and it's an education curve just because the solutions and the kind of the strategy behind this hasn't really existed. And what we found definitely, with you and with others who we talked to, there's a portal, that we, a client facing portal that we offer. There's one custom coded workflow
Mm-hmm.
that supports this. But those are like the shiny objects, and just the strategy to create a space for your post sales management team to do their job and not be fumbling over sales and service. Like, that's usually the unlock. So, now I'll be honest, like, I was still learning about how to solve this problem effectively. And, after we started working together, I took the RevOps, boot camp course.
Mm-hmm.
So prior to this, we had a few maps, right? But that's not where we started, with you. And we so we, just like a lot of people, tried to solve this, with a point solution. But as you started to implement the deliverable object, take me through kind of what you were learning as we were building that out. Are you still with me, Cody? looks like we might have lost Cody. Hopefully we can get him back.
It felt like open. Oh, there you are. You're back.
There we go. Yep.
Perfect. I don't know if it was you or me, but I was carrying on the show.
All right. Well, somebody was. One of us was. So what did you learn from this process? The deliverable object specifically.
Yeah, the first thing was, it's one of those things where HubSpot is innovating so fast all the time. And as someone who was kind of put into a role that was like, hey, we don't have a roadmap for this. We don't have resources to like help you learn. We just think that you're the person who is gonna figure this out. And so I was operating only on what I could find, things that I could watch. And I think as that relates to deliverables and custom objects and such, you were presenting an idea that wasn't even in my like lexicon. Just the ideas of the ways that you can use something in like this that's so customizable and so can be made to be so perfect fit for what you need.
Without code,
right.
Without development, right?
Yeah, well, and that was a huge selling point for me too. I think when we first talked, I even though I'm not a developer, I'm generally aware that people who can code can do almost whatever they want, assuming that they, within the systems they're using, have access to API endpoints and other things like that. But if you had said, we can set this up for you, and then to maintain this, you're going to need to either contract us for $600 a month for eternity, or or hire someone right now with the development capacity who would obviously need to be paid accordingly. Like, again, as a small bit, like that just wasn't really an option for us. And so learning that that this was something that was relatively low code, if not completely low, completely no code post that one workflow. I don't know. I'm a self-maintainer for us in HubSpot, and so being able to maintain it alone and then have the capacity to scale that as as my team grows, without, again, having to focus on hiring developers, was just a huge plus.
Right.
And may have been one of the biggest selling points outside of it just being the solution that we needed.
And so it's a big part of this whole thing, because this, for me, I started creating it to support client facing portals, and it just started to surprise me at how easy and affordable this could be for people that have really had nothing to work with prior to now.
Mm-hmm.
And with the goal of, the reason that most businesses I've seen do not invest in the ability to do this for their own teams or for their customers is like what you just mentioned. There's usually an initial project cost that is almost always sticker shock, but then there's always like some kind of managed services or maintenance contract that is required to go with it. And, people are just done with that. Like,
yeah,
especially if you're familiar with how HubSpot works in any other way, it just probably it's another thing that just doesn't sit right. Like, I'm investing in this system that's so easy to use, but for some reason, we've got to pay developer. We got to do no.
Yeah. Well, and if it's a solution that works well and doesn't have a lot of problems, then paying someone to hover for 30 out of 31 days a month, if even, that, again, that adds up and feels cataclysmic to a small business. Yeah. And so yeah, I mean, it was just, it was a no-brainer, I think, once I got a sense of how this actually functions in the long term. And you guys were amazing at communicating that, yeah, once we're done, if you don't ever want to talk to me again, you shouldn't need to. And which ironically makes me more interested in talking to you more often. But, you were so clear about that, and you were like, we're going to provide a guide that walks you through if you need to make changes, if you need to tweak, even without coding experience, if you need to make a small update to this workflow or add a pipeline or whatever it is, here's how you can do that. And you won't need to come to me for that. Again, acknowledging that, like you said, I am someone who likes to learn about the systems that I'm managing. And so if I'm going to manage every other aspect of this, having to contract out for one small thing was going to be really difficult to stomach.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we've brought in, and this is where we decided to start piecing this up, because really it's the strategy that is the first piece that really unlocks what people want to do with their post-sales order management. And that strategy is just making a place in HubSpot to hold the data and have people own that data and own that process, and do it in a way that is not line items and can be associated with whichever other objects like you need to be associated with. It's easy to report on, has the staging gate, functionality. So this piece, we bring in a customer orders object and a deliverables object, just because the customer orders is like a placeholder for the orders object that is now native and is almost getting close to full development, that people use in the same way when they're integrating with Shopify and ERP systems, right? So, which is where all this stems from, is kind of taking a cue from how those systems do it, making sure we can create space for that data, and then be able to show it to the customer. In between, we happen to have internal customers that need the exact same things to happen in order to show, our external customers. So we did 2 objects and 1 workflow.
Mm-hmm.
As you started creating these objects and defining your pipelines, what were you seeing?
So I think it allowed us to really significantly start to consolidate our deal pipelines. That was one thing that had been on my radar for a long time, because as I was learning more about HubSpot and inbound methodology and the flywheel and the customer journey, that felt like something, the customer journey, it generally doesn't matter what they're buying from us. Our customers are going through the same steps to get there. I think that doesn't perfectly lend itself to like a single deal pipeline. I don't know if that's realistic, but what it did do was allow us to say, okay, well, when they're buying, any products that ship from a third-party vendor, for example, they generally go through the same steps as far as a buyer's journey is concerned. And that is ripe for consolidating deal pipelines. So instead of having one pipeline per revenue stream or per business line, now we can push all those business lines together in a single deal pipeline. And that was super helpful. And then on the back end of it, when I say that, I mean, once we hit closed won and deliverables are created, customer order is created, then we can group those pipelines by the type of fulfillment that those products need to go through or those services need to go through. So not all of these are totally fleshed out. Some of these are hidden to the rest of my team. I think the team only sees ADP external products and internal products right now as we continue to flesh out some of these others. But then we start looking at, okay, so products that we stock in-house, where it doesn't matter where we get them from, what that procurement process looks like, we stock them and we ship them from our warehouse. And so from a fulfillment post-order or, post-sale to the customer, they all follow this exact process. And we do have a couple, if we're going to hand deliver it, or if we're waiting on stock, or if we're otherwise holding it. But generally speaking, the order comes in, our guys pack it, our guys ship it, we invoice it. and that's it. And so, beyond the benefit of having a pipeline specifically for these products, we also got to this place where, well, what if we have these 100 chargers, but we don't have these 100 headphones? A deal with line items doesn't really give you the capacity to accommodate that, because then really your only option is, okay, well, we don't want to wait to get them their chargers, so we're going to do a partial shipment. But there's no way to notate that on the deal other than like in a note that says, we shipped out these on this day, and here's the tracking information. We're still waiting to ship out these. We expect that they'll arrive on this date, whatever that is. Again, breaking it down to deliverables that are created by line item on the deal. Now I can see very clearly these deliverables are associated to this overarching order, but within this order, the cable or the chargers have gone out, but the headphones are still in waiting on stock. And then it's very, very easy to see at a glance who's waiting on what from us, what has gone out, what has come back. And then, exploring this a bit has given us a little bit more capacity for managing things like partial shipments of the same product. And so now I can say, okay, well, when we've shipped out 50 of 100 of something, and it moves to the ship/delivered stage, a couple prompted properties later, this deliverable is updated to show here's how many shipped out, here's the tracking, and another deliverable is automatically generated for the remaining 50 that we need to get out the door, tied to the same order with the same information, all the same associations, and with the updated amount that needs to go out the door for the second time around. So I feel like there's just so much variation and capacity here. And then again, I don't need to go through the steps in every other fulfillment pipeline, but again, we can do that, for products that are drop shipped from external or third parties, basically, or again, we just say external products. Less steps because we're not touching it before it gets to the customer. But again, it allows for variation between products that are on the same order. But now a deal that is selling internal products and external products generates deliverables in the right pipelines for their own fulfillment. And we don't have to split the deal. We don't have to try and keep deals moving in conjunction with one another, because we just move the deliverables through the process as they complete their fulfillment. And then once all the deliverables have been fulfilled, we can either invoice on the whole. Now we have the capacity to manage partial invoicing as well, or invoicing, immediately as things go out the door. And so it just, I don't know, it gives us so much more flexibility in how we manage, how we look at things, and then what's accessible at a glance. Even fulfillment metrics has been a huge thing that has come out of this, because we didn't have the capacity to manage, okay, when was this order placed and when did this product go out, as just the most basic, like, order cycle time. That wasn't a thing we could have really managed.
And let's jump over to the dashboard, because this is usually something that might spark this kind of activity to happen, like reporting or visibility, that leadership wants. That might be the first request. And then you're like, okay, I look at all these 10 different deal pipelines, and there's no way I'm going to be able to provide that, right? So the granularity that the leadership team often wants, and for good reason, like, we've got this new product, we've got this new way of doing business, this new delivery mechanism. I need to know how that thing is doing, because we're spending money on training and development, and we think it's the right thing to do, but we want to be sure. So I want to report on it. But then I've got this system, especially when you're trying to do this all out of one deal pipeline, like, you just will never get to the granularity you need. So I want to double click on something you said, and the way you said it, like, separation of this, like, led to naming things in better ways so that that team could understand it. it gave you freedom to explore
Mm-hmm.
how to do this effectively, which is still happening now. And you can do it without like annoying the hell out of the sales team and getting their buy-in at every step of the process. You guys have a very close team, so there's collaboration isn't very hard, but it just adds to the bandwidth required to make any kind of changes at all. And when you start to separate this stuff out, you just can do things more efficiently and more effectively, naturally, while doing it in this custom object way, in a way that's going to help with other projects down the road, but also being able to associate it in places where the sales team can still see it. We're not creating silos,
Right.
while we do this, right?
Right. Well, and we don't have to fit square pegs into round holes, because it's not a deal that has to be going through generic enough stages to to house everything. Now it's internal products go through their process and it's the same process every time, and we can be as detailed as we need to because every internal product is going through this process. So if the warehouse team needs more data, more granularity, more checks and balances for their employees to like manage things, we can build that in. Whereas if the procurement team that's ordering products from third-party vendors that are just being drop shipped to the customer, if they don't need all those checks and balances, they don't need that much granularity, we don't have to have it in that pipeline. And then like you said, all the while, the salesperson who closed that deal, they don't have to click into the deal and read a note that they hope somebody updated without a timestamp to see whether or not things have gone out the door, because now they can just see it.
We love our notes sometimes,
Yeah.
don't we? It's like
Oh
a
yeah.
safety blanket until it's not.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what
Notes
kind
are
of
always.
insights are you able to provide to your team just like right out of the gate?
Yeah. So I think the first thing, and this is a very, very young dashboard here, but first and foremost, being able to see deliverables that exist but are not yet fulfilled, all in one place was a helpful thing. And it is a lot. It looks like a lot, but being able to see them all at once, and again, separate them by the team responsible for them. So again, not having to click into every deal to figure out exactly what you're responsible for. Now we can see on the left side, our warehouse team manages these deliverables, and then our procurement team manages these deliverables. And so they can see what is not yet fulfilled, and the status that the deliverables in for what work they've done so far. Similar to things that haven't been invoiced yet. But then we start, and this is honestly where I just started Googling what are post-sale or fulfillment metrics that are important for companies' success, and started hitting a ton of things that as a person who is not traditionally from an operations background, or a fulfillment background in any capacity, I was just trying to educate myself on okay, well, how do I prove that we're bringing value here, and what can I offer to the leadership team who does know what I'm talking about when I say order cycle time, so that they
And
can
I'm
get some
so
data.
glad you touched on that, because that's where the nuance of all this is important, and the way we name things is important. Like if you look at ticket success metrics or Google help desk metrics, it's all you're going to find is related to, ticket time to close, SLAs and all this stuff. So it goes, you know, creating the space, naming things properly has just this way bigger impact than most people, imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. I mean, and obviously those things have a place. It is important to take note of those. But yeah, when we started looking at fulfillment, what we were acknowledging again, because we were everything was so compiled into a deal that wasn't made to handle it all. We couldn't get vision we couldn't get clarity into where is this bottleneck, like why is this constantly taking longer than we think it should. And some were easier to diagnose than others, but having, again, this like deliverable process where things are going through their own steps, that are relative to their process for fulfillment. Now we can see, like, okay, how long on average is it taking for this type of product from the date that the order is created to make it out the door? How long is it taking, or what is our case fill rate for these things? So, when things go out the door the first time, what percentage of the total ordered are making it out the door? And that then gives us the capacity to see, like, okay, how often are we sending partial shipments? That's going to cost us more money every time we send a partial shipment out the door. Are we not managing inventory properly because this product constantly has a low case fill rate? We're always sending out partial shipments of this product. Are we underestimating demand? Is stock not available? Like, there's just so much you can glean from seeing things like this. And so again, and then again, being able to identify bottlenecks or struggles, or objectively, sometimes just where problems exist internally, where we need to make a change to our process, or reassign responsibility, whatever it is. It starts to give us some visibility into that. And there's so many more metrics here. I have like a bookmarked set of pages where I'm just learning about fulfillment metrics and trying to figure out ways to bring those into this system.
Yeah. And I'm sure if you had searched for that when you just had deals, like all of this is like foreign, or like, I think I need like an ERP system is the only way I'm going to be able to do this. And like, once you have this in place, now it's like making sense. Like, oh yeah, now I can use this. I just need to add this property on this object. I don't have to care about the deal or the sales or anything, right? We don't have to talk about it as a team. Like, just all this stuff starts to go away. And then what I'd like you to show next is when we talk about a space for the team, to do their job without having to click around into multiple systems, even multiple records in HubSpot. We get a little click heavy when we think we're doing great admin work, but we create endless scroll situations, and you got to click into this record and that record. And what we've been gifted with, after we started this process, and it's really hard to explain, but this is why I choose to do stuff like this in HubSpot. We're not trying to replace systems like accounting systems or ERP or inventory management systems. We are trying to create a space for any customer facing teams, or people involved in customer processes, to make it easier for them to do their job. And knowing that that's HubSpot's goal as well, like that's everything behind Grow Better, is usability of the platform. As we create this space, now when HubSpot delivers this update to association property list cards, now we can actually, we're going to get to the point where one person responsible for this is looking at the same information as other people involved in the process, but they only have to look at one record inside of HubSpot to do their job. That's one thing. And we get very clear on the data that we need from other systems, so that when we integrate stuff like accounting and ERPs, we can give very clear instructions, and we don't have to take this approach of just minimal information and the other system is in control, or creating digital twins. Because we can define, look, I'm in this process, I need this exact thing, the way this card looks, where can I get these properties, in this other system? I just want those, right? So I get a little excited about this, obviously. I'd love to hear, your perspective on what you've been doing with the cards here.
Yeah. So, again, some of this predated these, the associated cards. but what we found was, and you know, we worked through this with you. I think this was a really iterative process for us because, you know, when we launched into this customer orders and deliverables infrastructure, I knew generally what we were looking for, but I'm definitely a person who tries to take cues from the subject matter experts on things. And so, you know, it's very easy to say, well, I just want this to work the way that I want it to work, and I don't care what it's meant to do. And I think that's a lot of people's attitudes in general, which, and again, there's not necessarily a problem with that. I think if you're, you know, if you're paying for something, and to an extent, you deserve to have it to work the way that you want it to. But at first, trying to figure out, like, okay, what objects, what do deliverables need to be associated with just the order? Do they need to be part of, like, tied to a deal or to a company, or like what's the layout here that makes the most sense, so that specifically we can get the segmentation and the clarity that we wanted? Because my goal here was to create objects that were owned by specific teams or specific players in the game, so that accountability was not in question ever. And there didn't have to be 8 different people's hands in every single deal or ticket or whatever it was. But what we learned, again, as we kind of iterated over and over again, or reiterated this process, was some of our team members still need, the ones who are doing the product fulfillment, they are pulling a lot of their details from the deal, and they needed a place. And some of it's based on limited HubSpot functionality at the moment, like being able to generate invoices. That has to come from the deal if you're using HubSpot's invoice functionality, basically. And so trying to fit things into custom objects where some of that functionality is limited was a little bit tough, created some repetitive tasks for people. And so then, in sitting down and talking with the procurement team, basically was able to learn, like, okay, well, where are you operating from? What data do you need when you're operating from that place? Have you considered operating from this other object? And if you have, what does that look like? What are the problems? What works? What doesn't work? And we talked through it until we realized having this information accessible on the deal was the best way to go about it. And then, almost perfectly timed, HubSpot is like, hey, guess what? Now you can have associated object information displayed directly on any other object, and it's editable, like, in the moment. And so I explained this to the person on our team who's doing procurement for those third-party products, and she was like, hang on, what? I don't have to click into the deliverables or, like, go to the order. I can just see this information exactly where I'm operating from 90% of the time.
Huge.
And so, I mean, like, eyes huge, mind blown. And so now, having the, and even not just for that person who's doing the procurement, the sales team can see this tab. And so if they need quick access to what was that purchase order, which products have gone out and which haven't, where are they in their stages, like, they can look at any individual deliverable and get the information that they need without leaving the deal, and without having to click into it, or without us having to choose, okay, well, we get 3 properties on the sidebar card. We got to choose wisely, because if you choose the wrong ones, people are going to have to click into it anyway. And sometimes you can't do that with just 3. You know, you need more. And so, again, being able to generate this card that gives this serves it and you know, on a silver platter to them exactly where they are, and then, again, provides that additional functionality of being able to edit, like the fact that our procurement folks can, from the deal, if they want to, update where it is in the fulfillment process. They don't have to just see it and then, again, click into another record to make that change. They can do it right here. It's in such infancy for us, and I feel like it's still already been pretty revolutionary in just convenience. And I think that's so much of what my job is right now, especially as we look to kind of go through this digital transformation at the company, is how do I shave 45 seconds off of what this person does 25 times a day, every single day, or 80 times a day, every single day? How do I take 20 seconds off of this interaction or this transaction this action they have to take every day, multiple times? And what does that add up to when it's a team of 4 over the course of a week, a month, a year? What value are we getting back? And so again, having this additional functionality in conjunction with the infrastructure that you helped us set up with customer orders and deliverables, I can't imagine how much time we're getting back. If HubSpot finds a way to tell me how much time it used to take for us to do stuff and how much time it takes now, I'd be incredibly interested in that.
Well, it can't do everything for us, man, but that's a good idea. They are experimenting a lot with AI tools, and I suggested something similar yesterday. There's a lot to be gleaned from just activity where people are clicking, but that approach you have is so refreshing, because that 45 seconds, like, that gets created when you have to click into other records, even if you have to click and get the sidebar, to pop up.
Yeah.
Instead of that first click being the editable spot, right? Those things add up. And they're like, and when it takes, first of all, the strategy, was in place to support as soon as this card was available. Setup is very minimal. And for 10, 20 minutes of time, you're going to save hours, days over the course of the year with just this one card. So really exciting stuff here. And as we wrap up, all of this is with an understanding of, like, a full platform is needed. We have complex processes. We have customer facing team. We have customer expectations we got to meet. How do we, where are the true wins? They don't have to be quick, but the strategic wins of how we use this platform to support our internal teams. And knowing that even though it's a customer platform, we should only expect it to do, customer experience management, customer communication management, not inventory management, not full procurement management, accounting. We're still going to have other systems in play. And Nate set me up so well last week when he asked, aren't we replacing this with the ERP? And no, we're not. What it's actually doing is the bridge is already halfway built to be able to connect the ERP in a way that's valuable for the customer-facing teams, in a way that should prevent the need for them having to go into the ERP, right? Which is usually the first place we go. We got to just do some stuff in here, and then you got to open up this piece of software. And we're lucky if it's only 45 seconds at that point. Yeah. Usually it's much more, right? We start to fight over which system is the source of truth. And instead we have this bridge that now we have a place for the data. HubSpot doesn't have to create it in every case. It shouldn't create it in every case. We're talking about non-people data. And now the next step, the beauty of doing it in this way, we can, flip on a client-facing portal and maintain the data in the system, and the portal maintains itself. So
I feel like I want to add, because I'm so excited about this, but I don't have anything revolutionary to say. Having the communication points in this system ready to go for whatever ERP system we find ourselves in is going to be, it's just such a huge time saver. And then we're not trying to fit square pegs into round holes. We have, like you said, half the bridge being built, I think, is a really good analogy, because we're right here, and all we have to do is get this other system to meet in the middle. Not that that's necessarily a small order, but having that capacity and then creating an ecosystem where the information that this team manages lives in this system and is editable by them, but is reflected here for visibility as needed. And then vice versa, the information that lives in this system and is managed by this team and is only editable here is reflected in that system so that they have access to what they need as well. Like that is the super end goal here. And then capitalizing on what HubSpot offers with the Content Hub and their CMS tools to leverage the data in the CRM and put it into a client-facing portal. I use this shape when I'm discussing it with people a lot, so forgive me for the hand motions. But being able to push the information up into a client-facing portal to display, basically in real time what we're seeing in the CRM is wild. And I mean, we talked about the cost effectiveness of some of this stuff earlier, but I mean, we were looking at getting a portal, created like ad hoc. Ad hoc is the wrong phrase. Getting a portal created entirely by a third-party developer, and I think we were, it was like $150K just for the creation of the portal to connect all these disparate systems and pull all this data that didn't live in one place from all these different places. And then again, $600 a month or whatever indefinitely to manage this system, because there were so many ways that it could break or need updates or whatever. And the idea that can be almost wholly compiled into like two systems between HubSpot and whatever ERP system we end up using is, I mean, we're going to jump from like 15 best in class random programs that at best have a native integration that is lackluster, at worst require constant manual updates or spreadsheet imports, to two systems that are integrated fully and that don't require a phone call every 5 minutes when somebody wants to know where's the shipment. I don't see the update, or like I can't find the information. And again, that's just another
scratching the surface here.
Yeah, I mean it's there's just so many possibilities with that, and so this infrastructure is so core to it.
Yeah, and it's exciting. It's an exciting journey. I'm grateful to be able to work with, you and your team to like, half my job sometimes is just letting, team like yours know that, oh, you want to do it in this common sense way? Yeah, we can do it in that common sense way. We don't have to try and hack things together. It doesn't have to cost, a lot of money, hundreds of hours, right? It just takes a little bit of strategic work up front, knowing that the customer experience is always at the center. It goes a long way. So I appreciate you coming on today to share the story.
My pleasure.
And I'm sure we'll be, ERP implementations are a mythical beast that I'm sure will be helpful to hear about that journey at points along the way. So it would be great to, have you back on sometime and continue to share the journey.
Yeah, ready to make it happen. So I'm not known for being short-winded, so I appreciate you giving me some space to talk it through.
Hey, that's why I created this space. So, as everybody out there, you start thinking about what you want to happen after the sale, and whether or not you would do that in HubSpot. Just take a look, find the opportunity, and let's grow. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.